They were talking about pancakes. Not politics, not work, not even anything remotely scandalous. Just pancakes. He liked them thin with lemon and powdered sugar. She said, "That's a crepe, not a pancake," and giggled like it was the most charming misunderstanding in the world. I sat there, less than 12 feet away, stirring cold coffee I hadn't ordered and wondering when exactly the ground would open and swallow me whole. She didn't know I was there. Not yet. And honestly, I didn't know I would be either. It wasn't part of some grand plan. I wasn't following her, spying on her, or plotting some cinematic confrontation. I was just sick. Food poisoning. The conference chicken had played me like a fiddle, and I'd spent most of the night in the hotel bathroom bargaining with God for one more hour of sleep, or at least the mercy of unconsciousness. When morning came, I dragged myself down to the hotel lobby, too dizzy to think, too miserable to return to the fourth floor. I just needed tea. Something mild. Something quiet. But instead, I got her. My wife. Sitting with another man in a sleek black suit, her hands animated, her laughter just a little too breathy. The kind of laugh she used to give me back when I still believed she liked me. What are the odds, right? Wrong place, wrong time? Or maybe the perfect place at the worst possible moment? I didn't even know she was in the same city. She told me she was visiting her aunt in Portland, sent me a photo of them at some plant nursery just 2 days earlier. I remember zooming in on the potted succulents behind her, like a fool, trying to guess what she might bring home. Turns out, she brought home nothing. Because she never went. I didn't stand up. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. I just watched, like a ghost who'd been forgotten, or worse, replaced. There was no PDA, no touching, nothing that could be labeled with certainty. But it was the way she looked at him, that unbearable softness in her eyes, the way she tilted her head, like she'd known him forever, like he wasn't some random stranger she met at a hotel lounge, but someone who'd already earned her trust, and maybe more. He said something about New York. She said something about last time. My stomach twisted, and it wasn't just the salmon from last night. They weren't new to each other. I should have gotten up and walked away. I should have pretended I was just some guy with tea problems, gone back to bed, and forgotten it all like a bad dream. But then she leaned in, lowered her voice, and said, "We have an hour." An hour. Like it was scheduled. Like this was planned. Like he had a room key, and she had already cleared her calendar. That was when my hand moved on its own. I reached for my phone. Not to take a picture. Not even to record audio. I just needed something to do, something to hold, because if I didn't anchor myself, I think I would have floated straight out of my own skin. She still hadn't seen me. The waiter brought them a pastry. She broke it in half and fed him the first bite. My wife. Feeding a man croissant bites at 9:13 a.m. on a business day. It was surreal. Like watching a movie where I was the joke character everyone forgets by the second act. The guy who should have known. The background extra in his own marriage. They stood up eventually. He pulled something from his pocket, a hotel key card. She tucked it into her purse like she'd done it 100 times before. And just like that, they turned to walk away. Past my table. Close enough I could smell the perfume I gave her for our anniversary 2 years ago. She didn't see me. Or if she did, she didn't flinch. They stepped into the elevator. And I sat there, one hand shaking around a lukewarm mug, the other still holding my phone, and I asked myself the question no one ever wants to ask out loud. How long had I been the only one not clued in? I didn't stand up right away. My legs wouldn't move. It felt like every muscle in my body had conspired to keep me seated, like even they didn't want to be part of whatever was coming next. The coffee in my cup had gone cold, but I still gripped it like it was the only thing tethering me to reality. My phone buzzed in my lap, a calendar reminder for a breakout session I was now definitely not attending. I dismissed it without thinking. Eyes locked on the elevator doors that had just swallowed my wife and the man with the slick haircut and the key card. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes after they left, trying to decide if I was crazy. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. Maybe it was business. Maybe they were just networking over croissants and keycards and ambiguous statements like, "We have an hour." Maybe this was all innocent, and I was the one making it something it wasn't. But I knew better. I knew my wife. And I knew that the way she touched her hair when she felt excited wasn't something she did in client meetings. Then I made a decision that still makes my heart pound as I write this. I stood up. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I was looking for. But I knew I couldn't just let it go. Not this time. Not when the lie was sitting this close to the surface. So I followed. Not immediately. I waited until the next elevator came down, Didn't want to risk stepping in right behind them. I pressed the button for every floor between 3 and 9, then stood silently as the doors opened and closed, hoping something, anything, would tell me where they'd gone. On the 6th floor, the hallway smelled faintly of citrus and cleaning products. There was nothing special about it. Beige carpet, framed abstract art, soft jazz playing through hidden speakers. But something told me to walk. Slowly. Casually. Like I belonged there. And then I saw it. Her scarf. Draped over the corner of the hallway table near room 624. A soft blue silk one I had bought her on a trip to Santa Fe, the one she said she never wore because it was too delicate. It was hers. No doubt. That room. 624. I stopped breathing. I wanted to knock. Bang on the door. Demand answers. But the fear of what I'd hear, what I might see, locked me in place. I just stood there, staring at the door like a sad ghost, wondering if they were laughing right now. If she was saying something charming, something clever, while I stood outside like a fool in yesterday's shirt. I didn't knock. Instead, I walked away. Cowardly? Probably. But I'm not the kind of guy who makes scenes. I'm the guy who apologizes when someone else steps on his foot. The guy who emails hotel management because the shower pressure's too low, but adds 3 "sorry to bother you" disclaimers in the message. That's who I am. I went down to the front desk. Now this part? I'm not proud of. But I asked the woman at the counter if I could confirm a guest's name. Said I was helping arrange a surprise for my wife's birthday. I know how stupid that sounds, but it worked. She pulled up the room and said, "Oh yes, Ms. Callie Renner is checked in under Mr. Devlin Moore's business reservation. They've been with us since yesterday." Since yesterday. She was already here before I got food poisoning. She was already in the building before I stumbled into that cafe. I had been breathing the same hotel air as her for almost 24 hours and hadn't known it. I muttered something like, "Thank you," and walked away from the desk with numb legs. Back in my room, I didn't cry. I didn't yell. I didn't punch the pillow or tear anything apart. Instead, I sat at the edge of the bed and opened our shared calendar app. Her girls' weekend was still there. She had even put a fake dinner with Maya at 6 p.m. that night. I clicked it open. There was a note. Try the new Italian place on Division. Remind Maya to ask about her cat. Her cat died 3 months ago. It was all fabricated. Layered, detailed lies. The kind that only happen when someone has done this before. When someone has had time to refine it. Practice it. Get comfortable with it. I stared at the fake entry for a long time, then added a line of my own. Lowell saw everything. I didn't know if she'd see it, but I needed to put those words somewhere. The next part, what she did after, was not what I expected. It got darker. It got stranger. It got personal in ways I still haven't figured out how to explain without shaking. But I'll try. I didn't sleep that night. I didn't even pretend to. I lay fully clothed on top of the hotel comforter, staring at the blinking light on the smoke detector and listening to the distant hum of hallway conversations, elevators rising and falling, doors opening and closing. I kept thinking I'd hear her voice at some point. Laughing, sighing, whispering. Something. But the silence was worse. Around midnight, I ordered tea from room service just to hear another human voice. When the knock came the next morning, it was soft. Deliberate. 3 quiet taps. Not housekeeping. Not a delivery. I knew it was her before I even stood up. I opened the door slowly, heart thudding like it was trying to climb into my throat. And there she was. My wife. Wearing a different outfit, plain black jeans, oversized beige sweater, hair pulled back like she was trying to look smaller. Innocent, almost. "Hey," she said, like we just bumped into each other in the grocery store. She actually smiled. "Can we talk?" Not, "What are you doing here?" Not, "I didn't expect to see you." Just, "Can we talk?" Like I was the one who owed her something. I stepped aside wordlessly. She walked in, glancing around like it was her first time in this room, even though it wasn't that different from the one she was sharing with Devlin Moore, the name I now couldn't stop seeing every time I closed my eyes. She sat on the edge of the armchair, crossed her legs, and rested her hands in her lap. The exact way she sat when she got jury duty 3 years ago. Calm. Neutral. Controlled. "I saw the calendar," she finally said. So she'd read it. The line I wrote, "Lowell saw everything." "Okay," I said. That's all. Just that word. Because honestly, I didn't trust myself to say more. My voice was still shaky, and I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Callie sighed like she was exhausted. "It's not what you think." Of course she said that. Of course she went with the classic line, The one universally reserved for moments when the truth is way too obvious to spin. I didn't respond. So she kept going. Devlin's an investor. We've been working on a project through my firm. He flew in early, and I didn't want to make things awkward by telling you. I laughed. I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was the weakest, most see-through lie I'd ever heard come out of her mouth. And I've heard a few over the years. Like the time she swore she missed my mom's birthday dinner because her phone died and not because she hated my mom's passive-aggressive lasagna. A business investor? I asked, still half laughing. You feed croissants to your investors now? Her jaw clenched. You were spying on me? No. I was getting tea. You were getting tea, she repeated mockingly. On the 6th floor? I followed you after you left the cafe. You dropped your scarf. That made her blink. She didn't expect me to say that. She definitely didn't expect me to be this calm. Maybe she thought I'd scream, cry, demand to know who he was, how long it had been, whether she loved him. But I didn't want the details. Not yet. I didn't want her to think I was looking for answers. I wanted her to sit in the silence. She shifted in the chair. Okay, she said, her voice dropping. You saw what you saw. So, what now? What now? Like this was a board game, and it was my turn to roll the dice. I don't know, I said. I guess I'm still processing the fact that my wife lied to my face and showed up in the same hotel as me without telling me, then checked in under another man's reservation and disappeared into a room for hours. You don't know that's what happened. I snapped. No? Then what happened, Callie? Did you hold a meeting in bed? Were you writing contracts in the dark with the door locked and your phone on silent? She didn't answer. For the first time, she looked nervous. Not apologetic. Just caught. I didn't plan for this to happen, she finally muttered. And I knew right then that it had happened. She confirmed it, even if she didn't say the words. She hadn't denied it. She just switched defense strategies. I walked over to the desk, picked up the little hotel notepad, and wrote something on the top sheet. I folded it once and handed it to her without saying a word. She hesitated, then opened it. Inside, it said, Go back to your room. Take your things. Leave by noon. Do not speak to me again until I say otherwise. She looked up at me, jaw slightly open. Lowell, come on. We're adults. Don't do this dramatic. I opened the door for her. She stood. Didn't cry. Didn't argue. Just walked past me and out into the hallway. I closed the door before she could say another word. Then I sat down in the chair she had just been in and stared at the blank television screen across from me. And for the first time in years, I felt completely, profoundly alone. But that was nothing compared to what came the next day. Because that's when Devlin Moore contacted me. And everything I thought I knew about my wife's betrayal turned out to be just the surface. The message came in at 6:07 the next morning. I hadn't slept. Again. I was halfway through a second cup of instant coffee and trying to remember what it felt like to wake up without nausea in my chest when my phone buzzed on the nightstand. Unknown number. I think we need to clear the air. Meet me downstairs by the lobby fireplace. 7 a.m. Devlin. That was it. No last name. No, sorry, no explanation, no warning. Just his first name, like we were old friends meeting for breakfast before catching a flight. I stared at it for a long time. My first instinct was to delete the message and go back to pretending none of this was real. Let him disappear into whatever luxury SUV he probably leased with quarterly bonuses and ego. But a different part of me, the one that had watched my wife feed him pastries and lied to my face without blinking, needed to see the man up close. I needed to know what kind of person she had replaced me with. At 6:58, I was in the elevator. I hadn't shaved, hadn't showered, and didn't care. I wore the same wrinkled clothes from the day before and looked like I'd been run over by a seminar on disappointment. The lobby was quiet, early morning quiet. A few business types passed through with rolling bags and Bluetooth headsets. The fireplace was lit, gas-fed, fake-looking, but warm. And there he was, Devlin Moore. He stood when I approached, tall, clean-shaven, confident in a way that made me want to throw something just for existing like that. He wore a tailored gray blazer, no tie, and a black shirt that probably cost more than my entire suitcase. He extended his hand. I didn't shake it. He gave a small nod, like he expected that, then motioned to a pair of chairs near the window. We sat. For a moment, no one spoke. Then he said, I didn't know she was married. I blinked. Excuse me. I mean, obviously, I know now. But when we met, back in March, she told me she'd been through a long-term breakup. Said it was messy and still legally unresolved. Said it was basically over. I sat back, stunned. She said, "What?" He nodded, calmly. I wouldn't have pursued her otherwise. I couldn't tell if he was telling the truth or just trying to manage the fallout. He spoke smoothly, too smoothly, like someone who's negotiated their way out of worse. Still, something in his face, a small twitch in his left eye, maybe made me believe he wasn't entirely comfortable. "She never mentioned my name?" I asked. "She said she didn't want to talk about her past. And that didn't bother you?" He shrugged. "Everyone's got ghosts." I shook my head and looked away. I didn't want his casual philosophy. I wanted the truth. Raw, ugly, inconvenient truth. "Did you sleep with her?" He didn't flinch. "Yes." There it was. Cold and surgical. "I didn't mean to," he added after a moment. "I know how hollow that sounds. But she was convincing. And I got wrapped up." I stood. "You didn't get wrapped up. You walked in with both eyes open." He looked up at me, and for the first time, he didn't seem like a walking magazine cover. "I didn't come here to defend myself," he said. "I came to tell you she's been lying to both of us." I paused. "What do you mean?" "She's seeing someone else." "Not just me. There's another guy I found out 2 weeks ago. Same act. Same routine. Same hotel, even. Different city. Different name. I only found out when I saw a message pop up on her phone while she was in the bathroom. I confronted her that night, and she told me he was just an emotional escape. But he's not. I saw pictures. She's playing both of us." I stared at him, my ears buzzing like static. For a moment, everything around us faded. The hotel lobby disappeared. The fake fire went silent. And all I could think was, how many lies had I swallowed just to stay married to someone who stopped choosing me months ago? "She didn't love me," I whispered, more to myself than to him. "She didn't love either of us," Devlin said. "And I think you need to know that before you blame the wrong person." I didn't want to agree with him. I wanted to hate him, to reduce him to some careless stranger who swept in and wrecked my life. But Callie had built the stage. He had just walked onto it. Devlin reached into his coat pocket and handed me something, a small folded receipt. I opened it. It was a room service bill. 2 nights ago. Room 719. Not his room. Not mine. Not Callie's. Another one. Another man. Another lie. "I found that in her purse yesterday," he said. "I think it's yours now." He stood up. "I'm checking out. I don't want any more part of this." And just like that, he walked out of the hotel, confident, composed, and somehow smaller than when I arrived. I stayed behind, staring at the paper, thinking about the room number, about how much I still didn't know, and about how far she had gone beyond me and never once looked back. I didn't go back upstairs. I couldn't. The elevator doors felt like steel traps and the hallway like a mouth waiting to close around me. So I walked out of the lobby, past the valet, through a drizzle-soaked sidewalk that hadn't seen sunlight since I arrived. I walked in circles for nearly an hour, dragging the weight of the receipt in my jacket pocket like it was a murder weapon. Room 719. A third room. A third name? I couldn't shake it. It felt too scripted, too precise, like some terrible psychological experiment where I was the only one unaware of the test conditions. Devlin hadn't said much, but what he did say kept echoing in my head. That she played both of us. That he saw texts. Photos. That another man had already been staying with her. She had created multiple realities in one building, 3 rooms, 3 stories, 3 versions of herself. And I was just one orbit in the mess she'd built. When I finally returned to the hotel, the concierge looked up as I passed, probably wondering if I'd gotten lost in the rain or just forgotten how to blink. I went to the elevators, hesitated again, then turned around. Instead of going up, I went to the front desk. The same woman from before was there. Neat ponytail. Smile too practiced to be real. "I think I lost something," I said. "My friend was in room 719, and I may have dropped my phone charger there yesterday. Would you be able to confirm the name on the room?" She hesitated. "I'm afraid we can't share that kind of information." I lowered my voice. "Please. It's important. I'm not asking for access, just a name." She tapped on her keyboard. Looked down. Looked up. "The room is registered under a corporate block," she said finally. "Name on file is Benjamin Holloway." Benjamin. That name didn't register at first. Not a colleague. Not a friend. Not family. Then it hit me. Benjamin Holloway was a former co-worker of Callie's. Someone she had always spoken about with strange affection. Years ago, when she was still at that nonprofit before jumping into consulting, she mentioned him more than once. How brilliant he was. How he got her. I never thought much of it. I mean, she talked about a lot of people, but I hadn't heard his name in ages. Apparently, I just wasn't listening closely enough. I thanked the woman and walked away with the name bouncing around in my head like a loose pin in a washing machine. Benjamin Holloway. He wasn't just someone from her past. He was someone she had once admitted made her wonder if she'd settled too quickly. Those were her words. I remember them clearly because it was the first time she ever implied that our marriage might not have been her first choice. We were lying in bed. She was tipsy from too much wine, scrolling through LinkedIn, laughing at profile photos and who aged the worst. Then she saw his page, and everything went still. She stared for a moment too long, then mumbled that line before setting the phone face down and saying she was tired. That was 3 years ago, and now he was here, in room 719. I went to the cafe and sat in the farthest corner, half hoping Callie would walk in again so I could confront her in the exact place where she fed another man croissants. But she didn't. She didn't text. She didn't call. She didn't try to explain. It was as if she knew the house of cards had collapsed and she'd rather vanish than pick it up. But I couldn't leave it like that. So I did something I never imagined I'd do. I went to room 719 and knocked. Once, twice, and waited. I didn't have a plan. I didn't know what I'd say, but I needed a face to go with the name. I needed to look Benjamin Holloway in the eyes and ask what version of Callie he'd been fed. The door opened slowly, and the man standing there was not who I expected. He looked tired, slouched, not polished like Devlin. His eyes were puffy, like he hadn't slept. His hair was grayer than I remembered from that long-ago LinkedIn profile. He blinked at me like he couldn't quite place me. "Can I help you?" he asked. "Are you Benjamin?" I asked. He nodded slowly. "I'm Callie's husband." His face went pale. Not surprised. Not confused. Just pale. Like he had been holding his breath for days, and someone had finally called him out. He stepped back and opened the door wider. "You better come in." And I did. I walked into a room that smelled faintly of cologne, instant coffee, and panic. And I braced myself. Because what Benjamin told me next didn't just confirm the betrayal. It rewrote everything. Benjamin didn't ask me to sit down, but I did anyway. There was a worn chair near the window, its fabric faded at the arms, as if it had seen too many tired people pass through. The curtains were drawn halfway, and a laptop blinked sleepily on the desk across from the bed. There were 2 mugs on the nightstand, one half full, one with lipstick smudged along the rim. Callie's. He sat on the edge of the bed and rubbed his face like he hadn't decided whether to speak or sprint out of the room. "I knew this would come," he said quietly. "Eventually." I didn't respond. My stomach was doing slow, painful turns, but I stayed silent. I needed him to talk. And after a moment, he did. "It started 6 months ago," he said. "She reached out to me through a professional platform. Just catching up," she said. "I was recently divorced." She said she was going through a rough patch too. Said you two had grown distant. She said we were distant? I interrupted. "She's the one who started sleeping with people behind my back." He didn't blink. "I know. I didn't at first. But I do now." He glanced at the floor, then took a breath and kept going. "She came to visit me in Cincinnati during a conference. We had lunch. That's all. I swear to you." But there was a tone, like something unspoken that she kept dangling. I didn't pursue it. I didn't even reply to most of her follow-ups. Then 2 months later, she told me she was going to be at a seminar in Atlanta and asked if we could meet again. I said no. "Obviously, you changed your mind," I said. He looked genuinely ashamed. 2 weeks ago, she sent me a message that said, "I don't feel like I belong to anyone anymore. I just want to feel seen." And for a moment, I believed it. I thought maybe she needed comfort. That maybe it wasn't about cheating, that it was about pain. I told her she could stop by my hotel for coffee. Nothing else. I pointed to the mugs. "Those don't look like just coffee." He looked me in the eye. "I didn't sleep with her, Lowell. I swear on everything I have left." She tried. But when she walked in, she was different. It wasn't sadness. It was strategy. She was charming, precise. She complimented the way I talked, laughed at jokes that weren't funny, asked questions about things I knew she didn't care about. It felt rehearsed. Like a performance. My throat tightened. I knew that version of her too. "She kissed me," he said, and I let her. But then she said something that made my blood run cold. She pulled away and said, "You're still the safest option if everything falls apart." I blinked. "What?" He nodded. That's when I realized I wasn't the man she wanted. I was the one she was keeping on standby. A backup, in case her real escape plan failed. I felt like I was sinking in my own skin. I stood up and started pacing the room. So what then? You let her go back to Devlin? You just let it happen. Benjamin stood too. She said she was staying in another room, just for one night, and that her flight left early. I never saw her again after that, and I deleted her number that night. I stopped and looked at him. You think she's running some kind of game? He hesitated. I think Callie's building lives. Parallel ones. Lives where she doesn't have to be responsible for any version of herself. She's sampling identities. With you, she's stable. With Devlin, she's seductive. With me, she wanted to be forgiven. It was too much. It sounded like the beginning of a psychological profile, not a marriage confession. She was in my bed 2 weeks ago, I whispered, crying about her job. I held her like it meant something. Meanwhile, she was planning this. Benjamin nodded, solemn. I don't think she's planning anymore. I think she's improvising. She's caught. And now she's scrambling. I sat down again, hands shaking. So what do I do? I asked, the words hollow. Benjamin looked down. She'll lie again. Probably even today. She'll try to spin it back on you. Say you were neglectful, distant, cold. Maybe she'll claim I came on to her. Or that Devlin was a mistake. She's good at rewriting scenes. He walked to the desk, opened his laptop, and pulled up a folder. I didn't want to be part of this anymore, so I saved everything. Messages, voicemails, even that photo from the cafe. You need to see who she really is when she thinks no one's watching. He handed me a USB drive. Use it if you have to. Just be careful. People like her don't unravel quietly. I took it. I didn't thank him. I couldn't. My throat wouldn't let the words out. I left that room with a weight I didn't have before, not just betrayal, but documentation of it. Evidence of how far she was willing to go to keep all her lives intact. And when I got back to my room, the lights were on. Callie was sitting on the bed, smiling, like she'd been waiting to explain everything away. She was sitting on the edge of the bed like she lived there. Legs crossed at the ankles, hands resting calmly in her lap, and that unnerving little smile stretched across her face like she'd rehearsed it in the mirror. The curtains were open now, strange, because I had closed them when I left. She wanted the light. She wanted clarity. Or maybe she just wanted to control how the scene looked when I walked in. Hey, she said, like this was her room too. Like she hadn't disappeared into another man's arms just days earlier. Like there wasn't a USB drive in my pocket holding screenshots of her lies, voice notes from late-night calls, calendar invites that led to fake cities and real betrayals. I figured we should talk, she added, patting the bed beside her. I didn't move. Instead, I placed my bag on the desk and slowly sat in the chair across from her. My body was trembling in small ways, not fear, exactly, not even anger anymore. It was the weight of finally seeing the person you married for who they are, and realizing you didn't miss the signs. You just explained them away until they formed a version of her you could live with. Callie waited a moment, then sighed. I'm not going to insult you by pretending nothing happened, she began, which was ironic, since that's exactly what she had been doing for days. But I need you to hear the truth from me, not from Devlin or whoever else has been whispering in your ear. You mean the people you lied to and manipulated? I said. She smiled again, only tighter now. More defensive. I made mistakes, Lowell. But not all of them were what you think. I have a USB drive full of proof, I said. I don't think. I know. Her face dropped for half a second. Just half. Then she adjusted. I'm sure you do, she said slowly. And I'm not going to argue facts. But I will say this, none of this started because I was trying to hurt you. It started because I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't interrupt. I wanted to hear what shape the lie would take next. For years, I've been Callie the wife, she said. Callie who shops on Sundays and folds towels the right way and always brings the good wine to your mother's house. And somewhere along the way, I stopped feeling anything. So yeah, I reached out to people who reminded me of other versions of myself, the ones that felt alive. She said, alive, like it was a defense. Like adultery was just CPR for a dying personality. And Devlin? I asked. She looked down. Devlin was exciting. But that ended before it started. Not according to the photos. Not according to the room service receipts. Her eyes flickered. You went through my things? No. They were given to me. Because not everyone you use is as blind as you think. That made her jaw tighten. She stood up and paced for a few seconds before facing me again. I was going to tell you, she said. After the conference, I had a speech planned. I thought maybe we could go to dinner somewhere quiet. I even made a reservation back home. Just to talk. You made a dinner reservation to confess to multiple affairs? She nodded. I thought if we were somewhere nice, it wouldn't feel like the end. There was something grotesquely poetic about that. She wanted the ambience of twinkling lights and overpriced risotto to soften the edges of betrayal. I don't care about your speech, I said. I care about the fact that while I was trying to fight for us, you were collecting men like exit strategies. One for your past, one for your career, one just in case the others failed. You didn't want a partner, Callie. You wanted escape hatches. She sat down again, quieter now. You were always so easy to lie to, she said suddenly. I froze. She didn't say it with cruelty. She said it with relief. You never pushed back. You always assumed the best. That's why I stayed. Because I could do anything and you'd convince yourself it wasn't what it looked like. That moment, that exact sentence, was the one that cracked something in me for good. I wasn't angry. I wasn't betrayed. I was ashamed. Because she was right. I had spent years shrinking myself down, forgiving too quickly, hoping too quietly, and calling it love. I stood up and pulled the USB from my pocket. Set it gently on the table. I'm not giving this to you, I said. I just want you to know it exists. She tilted her head. So what? You're threatening me now? No, I replied. I'm waking up. I grabbed my bag. I didn't wait for her to respond. I walked out of that room, past the front desk, past the lobby that still smelled like yesterday's coffee and cologne, and I kept walking until the street noise drowned out the echo of her voice. But the story wasn't over, because 2 days later, I received a call from a blocked number. It wasn't her. It wasn't Devlin. It wasn't Benjamin. It was someone else entirely. And what they told me, it made everything before it feel like an appetizer. The call came late in the afternoon. I was back home by then, not our home, but a quiet little Airbnb outside the city with creaky wooden floors, oversized curtains, and no memories in the walls. I'd packed only 2 bags, clothes and my laptop. The rest, I'd left behind like furniture after a fire. Callie hadn't tried to contact me again. No calls. No texts. Just silence, which was somehow louder than anything she could have said. The number was blocked. I almost didn't pick up. But something in me, maybe the part that still needed closure, or maybe just the exhausted ghost of who I used to be, hit accept and held the phone to my ear. Lowell, a man asked. Yes. My name is Patrick. I'm Callie's brother. That stopped me cold. I didn't know she had a brother. She had never once mentioned him. I know that's probably a surprise, he said, as if reading my thoughts. But I haven't spoken to her in a long time. Until recently. I just thought you deserved to know some things. He went on to explain that he and Callie had been estranged for nearly a decade. She had cut him off after a falling out over their late father's estate, a messy, bitter ordeal he didn't dive too deep into. But recently, she'd contacted him again. Out of nowhere. Emotional. Frantic. She told me she messed everything up, he said. Told me she hurt someone she didn't think would ever walk away. I'm guessing that's you. Why are you calling me? I asked softly. Because I've seen her tear people apart, Lowell. And I've also seen what happens when someone finally tells her no. She spirals. She self-destructs. And I know you probably don't care, but she's not okay. Not really. I didn't speak. He took a breath. I'm not asking you to forgive her. I'm not even saying you should talk to her. I'm just telling you that walking away from her, it might be the best thing you've ever done for both of you. And he was right. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and watched the light shift across the hardwood floor. No tears. No dramatic realizations. Just a quiet understanding that something had ended, and that not all endings have to burn to be final. A week passed. Then 2. I filed the papers. I didn't leave a note. She got the notification through her lawyer. I assumed she expected it. I never looked back. But life, real life, has a strange way of rebuilding around the crater. And sometimes, when you clear the wreckage, you find things growing in places you never expected. I started jogging again. I reached out to friends I hadn't seen in years, people I'd pushed away while orbiting around Callie's moods and calendars. I joined a book club. I even went on a hike with a coworker who's terrible at small talk but surprisingly good at bringing the right snacks. I won't pretend I healed overnight. Some nights still ache. Some mornings still start with that phantom sensation, like I forgot something important, like she's just in the other room. But those moments are fading. And in their place, I'm building something better. Not perfect. Not romantic comedy magic, but honest. And one morning, while sitting at that same cafe back in my hometown, sipping bitter coffee and watching strangers pass by the window, I realized something. She didn't break me. She freed me. From the lie. From the weight. From a version of myself that thought love meant tolerating being invisible. Now I see myself again. And honestly, I like what I see.